Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Iram Saeed, and I am honored to be hosting a very important show today on the Women's National Day of Pakistan on 12th of February. I am honored because not only is this a personal passion of mine to help get women empowered, but also because as a Pakistani, I believe that empowerment of women is truly what the future of our beloved country rests on. The Dalai Lama has said, very openly declared, that the Western woman is going to change the world. I personally believe that to be true, that yes, Western women will change the world, but I also believe that they will do so with the help of their sisters in the East. Pakistan is well on its way in that journey along with the rest of the world. One of the very interesting things that has been developing in the West, of course, is not only have women achieved a huge amount of success in the area of empowerment and gaining equal rights and recognitions alongside of men, but one of the interesting aspects that have developed is that the anxiety and depression levels in women are at a record high. Experts are contributing that to the role reversal and the gender-related confusion that has occurred due to the empowerment that has taken place. As Pakistanis, perhaps we can avoid that, not only because Pakistan has its own unique culture and unique sets of problems, and therefore the solutions should be unique to Pakistan, but also because perhaps being a Muslim nation, we already have a formula that we can follow, not just for the empowerment of women, but also to really understand what it means to have empowered women, but not get confused about the roles and the gender-related issues that we have. 12th of February is National Women's Day in Pakistan. There's history to that, which I am very, very proud to be able to bring to you today. In 1983, almost 3 decades ago, there was a march that was held against the government of that time, which was proposing a ban against the accumulation of women together. The ban was led by some very courageous women, and very proud to say that today we have one of those representatives amongst us today. These courageous women not only stood for the rights for the rest of the women of Pakistan, but for the very first time, women were beaten and even had to be, they were beaten by batons, and tear gas was even used by the police. So today, we have a member of that march with us today. We're going to talk about not just the issues that Pakistani women have faced in the past, but why the future for the empowerment of women looks very, very bright. So let me begin the show by welcoming our esteemed guests today. To my right, we have Ms. Khabar Mumtaz. She's the chairperson of the National Commission for the Status of Women. And you, ma'am, are the person that I was mentioning who was part of that very memorable and historic march that we are celebrating Women's Day for today, National Day for Women. Next to Ma'am Khabar is Binish Javed Raja. She is the legal expert that is going to be talking about why we are excited about women's rights in Pakistan from the legal aspect. And of course, at the very end is Iram Mumtaz. She's a social activist. She's working at the grassroots level with most women and helping in women's rights. So welcome. It's wonderful to have you guys here. So beginning with you, ma'am, can you take us back to that very historic and memorable day? What did it feel like to be a part of that?
Thank you, and I'm glad that National Women's Day is being focused upon in your program. Just wanted to start by that was the time we had martial law in the country, and there was political activity was completely banned. There was almost a freeze on public activity. There were no protests, no demonstrations because of the hard repression of that time. And in the Majlis-e-Shura, that is the assembly, a proposed law was the law of evidence, which under that proposed law, women's evidence was going to be cut down to half. So the women at that time, in 1981, women had come together on a platform to protest what they felt were discriminatory laws, especially the Hudud ordinances, which under the rape ordinance, the Zina ordinance, seemed to really discriminate against women and minorities. And that was the rallying point that brought women together on a platform to raise their voice against what they felt was going against the principles of the Constitution, which has given us equal rights to all citizens in Pakistan. And so in 1983, when this law was being debated in the assembly, that's when the women felt that they had to go and give their point of view on how they felt that this particular law was discriminatory. And they decided to take a petition, a written petition, to the Chief Justice of the Lahore High Court. And they said we would go together, and it was Women's Action Forum, Punjab Women Lawyers Association, who had actually the ones who had given the call for taking this petition. And we gathered in one of the, on the Mall Road on Regal Chowk, to just go in twos, because there was a section 144 imposed at that time. I said we will not violate it, we just want to take our petition. And when we got there, we discovered there were more police than we had even thought of. We didn't even think that it merited a police action. And we were taken, surrounded, and we were told we couldn't go. And that was when we had banners, and we had our petition, and we had about 200 women perhaps, and many men who were around just to see what was happening, because it was something new. There was no political activity. So this was the time that they could see what these women were up to. And then Habib Jalib, a well-known
very well-known poet, yes, was there to
seen as a revolutionary poet, he came and he sort of started reciting his poems, asking the police to let us go, and being very supportive. But the police, instead of listening to him, started beating him up. And that's when the women got very angry. And that's when they broke the batons and started going towards the High Court, but they were really beaten. Some were dragged, some were beaten up. There was tear gas.
I've seen some pictures. They're horrifying.
Yes. And there were women from all kinds of women, activists, women who've been in politics, professionals, and students. And then as the police then came with the tear gas, a lot of them, the women there, had never even experienced something like that, and did not expect something like that. And that's when about 50 women were arrested and put into vans and taken to the Thana. Some reached the High Court and submitted their petition. But since there was a total political vacuum, this made headlines. And that also started two things that I think is important, the significance of the day. Number one was that the women in Islamabad and Karachi and everywhere else, they came up with one voice saying that this shouldn't have happened, and we should have this debate. And the first interaction and lobbying with the women in the parliament also began. So secondly, it was women have been participating in political activities. We have a history of it from the Pakistan movement onwards. There's been a history of women's political participation. But this was women raising a voice for their own rights. And that is what is significant about it. And that, I think, has, from year to year, women's activists have celebrated the day, and in 2010 it was declared officially the Pakistani Women's Day, National Women's Day. I'm just coming from a meeting where it's being celebrated by the Women's Parliamentary Caucus to look at laws and to also celebrate this interaction between parliamentarians as well as the women and women activists, civil society actors, other actors who are stakeholders in women's equality, women's right to protection.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank you again for your service, for your courage on behalf of all the women of Pakistan. Thank you so much. You have spent decades fighting for our rights and for the rights. Yes, for all of our rights, absolutely. How do you feel looking back, 3 decades ago compared to what you have today? You are now the chairperson of a body that was specifically allocated for the empowerment of women.
For the promotion of women's rights and equality and
Equality,
empowerment.
gender
That's right.
equality.
And this was one of the demands of the women activists in Pakistan, that we need a commission, a permanent commission that monitors what is happening, acts as a watchdog on compliance, constitutional obligations as well as international obligations. And that's what we're trying to do. But we've come a long way since then, I think. I mean, we've had some very strong legislation for women's protection.
Yes.
At the federal level, and after the 18th Amendment, the provincial governments have also, very, very radical and very protective legislation. So as far as legislation goes, we have moved a lot. And the other thing that is important is that there is much larger awareness, and women see it as their right to raise their voice for their rights.
Which is so important, isn't it?
It is important.
And we will talk about that in just a little bit. And I want to address a question to you, Binesh, because Binesh, we were talking about the legislation and the laws that have been passed. So first of all, because you're a younger member of our society than the rest of us, what does empowerment of women mean to you, first of all, and then being a representative of the legal community, what are some of the laws, the recent legislations that have been passed?
All right, thank you, for inviting me to the show.
You're so welcome. Pleasure to have
Quaid
you.
Azam once said, he said that there are two powers in the world, one the sword, and other the pen. So there is a great rivalry and competition between the two, but there is another third power which is much stronger, and that is the women.
Absolutely.
So we can see from the quote that the women are the most powerful class of any society.
Yes.
So we can see that in 2015 there was this Punjab women protection violence against women bill was passed in 2016 by the Punjab Assembly, which provided women with their rights, and they could stand for the violence against their rights under that bill. And centers were built as well. They could go over there and they could ask for justice for their rights, and they could go there for the help. And
What do you think as far as the implementation is concerned? What Ma'am Khawa was also mentioning, it's one thing to have bills and legislations in place. It's quite another to actually implement them. What do you see, Binesh, as some of the most important things that steps that need to be taken in order to implement these laws?
First of all, I think we need to figure out that the violence against women is happening in our country, and we need to understand the fact that we need to provide them with their rights, and we need to give them their protection against the violence that is being happening with them. So there is this bill that has been passed. So we need to pass bills. We need to have more conferences. We need to have more seminars, and we need to have more gatherings where we can educate women about their rights, and so that they can come up and they can ask for the.
Absolutely. You know, one of the most important things, ladies and gentlemen, is that awareness that we are talking about. As some of you may know, I have lived in the US for the past 24 years, and I have volunteered very actively for the victims of domestic violence. And domestic violence is something that I see very commonly even in the US. So it's not just restricted to our culture, it is everywhere, it's prevalent, it's all over the world. The difference might be that women in the West, for the most part, understand their rights, and there is the police is there to protect them, but nothing can be done until the women raise their voice and there is awareness about rights. So that is very, very important, I believe, in Pakistan also. For the women to really become empowered, the awareness needs to be there. So Iram, my next question is for you, because you actually work with women at grassroots level. I know that you're very active in helping domestic violence victims and empowering women in all different ways. What has been your experience, and what do you feel Pakistan is doing as far as empowerment of its women is concerned?
Okay, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me on such a special day. I really feel honored, Iram.
Thank you.
And in your intro, you mentioned the perfect model. And we, as a Muslim nation, we are really fortunate to have that perfect model, the teachings of Quran and Sunnah, which were passed on to us 14 years back. That model is still 1400 years back, you see. that model is there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, once we want to avoid that model and not act on it or not apply it in our educational system, the problem arises. What you mentioned in what is happening in the West. So what we are doing is, as an educationist and as an activist, we have to look at the main causes of all this discomfort, all the problems which are there in our society, and why women are suffering so much. Coming back to what our perfect model, which is there for the past 1400 years.
Yes.
So we are trying to apply that in our education system. Make females aware about, make them aware of their rights, which were given to us 1400 years ago. But unfortunately, there's a lot of negative propaganda going on through media and all that about Islam. Foreigners who are sitting in Western countries, they think that it suppresses.
Women are suppressed here in Muslim countries.
So
Yeah,
we need
that's
to
what they
enlighten
think.
them as well. You see, and we have amazing, women here in Pakistan, mashallah, empowered women.
Yes.
We even have had a prime minister, female prime minister, and then in the parliament, you'll see so many ministers, female ministers, in all walks of life. So what we are doing is, at grassroots level.
Iram, this is one of the topics exactly that I speak very passionately on, and I want to dig a little bit deeper with you on that.
Sure.
But we need to take a short break. So when we come back, that's what we're going to be talking about. What is that perfect formula or the model that I think even West doesn't have? So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. Please stay tuned. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching a special transmission celebrating the National Women's Day of Pakistan, where we're not just discussing the current status of empowerment of women in Pakistan, but also discussing how we can make sure that Pakistan becomes an example and a leader in making sure that its women are empowered. So back to our guest panel again. We were talking about how we can make sure that Pakistan becomes a leader in the empowerment of its women. So ma'am, Khawer, back to you. Let's talk about what are some of the challenges that you find in your work in ensuring that women have equal rights in Pakistan.
I think the challenges, some challenges are rather huge and embedded in our systems, especially the social systems. But there are two kinds of things that we have to do together in order to get women at a level that they are at par with men.
Yes.
Most important is that we have to, and I would like to add that there is change taking place in terms of people's attitude.
Yes.
For instance, the change is that people now, households, poor, rich, want to educate their daughters as much as they want to educate
Which
their
is
boys.
wonderful, yes.
And I think that's the starting point. Secondly, women's work is now welcome. Women's work, where it's required, which does help a family and a household sustain itself, is quite welcome.
Also, of course, affects the GDP at national level as well.
Exactly. So, those are the positive sort of trends. Then we have systems like the political system, which encourages women to come into politics by reserving seats for them in our assemblies and in our local government. And I think that's where the local government is where the women can be mobilized the most for improvement of their, because they become role models at the local level. And I think what Iram was talking about, that how do we get people at the grassroots level to have a voice in what they feel should be their right, and to be the transmitters of knowledge and information about existing provisions. Now so that's one part of it, that we want the social system where women are recognized as capable with right to opportunities and a say in what has to be done. On the other hand, we have, I think we are one of the countries which has about the maximum laws for women's protection. But our results show that the laws are not really having an impact. And that is the challenge, that the implementation of those laws with the multiple obstacles and barriers have to be overcome. I'm so sorry. So the multiple barriers are in the form of people not knowing that there's a law that can protect them.
So awareness is
Awareness not only at the level of ordinary citizens, but also the awareness at the level of people who are supposed to implement the law. The lower judiciary, for instance. I mean, I have my own experience of going to a judicial academy and talking to magistrates, civil magistrates who would be going in for promotion, and they hadn't heard of any of the new laws that had come into being for women. So they have to be also, everybody has to be brought into the loop of the measures that are being taken.
Do you think media would play a big role in
This
bringing
is
that
an
awareness
institutional
about?
thing. The institution has to play. The judicial, every province had a judicial academy which is tasked with training judges,
Yes.
magistrates at the lower level, and then they are the ones who go on to become your high court judges.
Yes, of course.
So that should be part of the training, ongoing training, that new laws that come in to be introduced to those people. The other, then you come to the point that the police attitudes, their competence. FIR will not be registered if it involves a woman. Their attitudes, stereotypical attitudes towards women. You start with a bias that they are probably responsible for whatever has happened to them. Those have to be through training systems and processes and criteria set for promotions or other things for police, for instance.
I agree totally.
And moreover, the kind of training in terms of forensics, of investigation, of prosecution, all this requires, when we want to change a society, then that every institution that is given certain responsibility has to come up to it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we are weak. We're actually very weak there.
I agree with you, ma'am, absolutely. And it's one thing to make laws and legislations, of course, and have
Very
institutions.
important, very important.
Very important. Yet, individuals make up the institutions. It's all the institutions are always being run by individuals. It's the mindset of the individuals, as we were talking about. And that's what I wanted to address with you, Iram, because you are the one that works at the grassroots levels. What do you find? What can be done about this mindset or the treating women in a very stereotypical way?
I think the solution lies in educating the masses, like what I totally agree with what Khawarappa said. All the laws are there, legislation is there, but there's no awareness about that. The females themselves who are oppressed, they don't know about those laws. So as an educationist, I think we need to make all these things, what are happening in our legislation and all that, make the students aware, make them aware about all these bills and their rights. So we have to make that part of our curriculum. You see whatever is happening, and recently I would like to share it with you that KPK government passed this education bill, and education is made mandatory from grade age 5 till 16 years, and a punishable act for the parents who will not send their kids to school.
Yes.
Which is amazing. So all the parents of KPK government, they need to be aware of this bill, and of course, and we have to apply this in whole spirit. So that is what is needed as an educationist, that we need to make everybody aware, the masses, as males as well as male, because male usually in our society are the oppressor. They are the ones who are doing most of the hanky-panky.
Thank you. Actually, that was one of the things I wanted to address. That you know, while we're talking about women empowerment, and we see women in almost every industry making their mark, or you know, fighting for their rights already. We have top fashion designers. Women are fighter pilots. Women are in sports, in mountaineering, even skiing. We were talking about that earlier. Our the Minister for Broadcasting,
Yes.
Mariam Aurangzeb is a woman. Our MD
Even
for
Saba
PTV is
Mohsen.
yes,
Saba
she's
Mohsen,
also a woman. So we have women everywhere. Of course, you are a leader in that as well, ma'am. While women are there and they're making their mark, of course, and going back to what we were talking about, the perfect formula that we already have as Muslims, empowerment of women cannot take place without its men. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, especially from the point of view that we already have the perfect formula.
Yeah. First of all, you know, like I said that unfortunately in our system there are two types of educational institutes. One for the privileged class, one for the underprivileged. So what we are trying to do is trying to bridge the gap between these two institutions and impart quality education to all, irrespective of their color, caste, creed, or religion, or their financial status.
Yes.
And of course, the men force, we have to take them in confidence as well. You know, like it's high time, and through the teachings of Quran and Sunnah, you know, we can educate them as well, that this is every female's, you know, religious right to get whatever you are getting, you know, equality and justice. So we have to apply that in, you know, like spirit. You know, in our ground reality is totally different. You know, what we are talking about and what is happening in ground reality. So I think all of us who are sitting here have a part to play. And you, like you mentioned, media plays a very important part. So why do we have to?
Because that would change the mindset.
Yes. Why do we have to paint a sob story about a woman who is suffering in a play? Why can't
Or
we?
conniving, or working behind the
Positive
scenes,
role
backstabbing.
the scheming women. Why
Yeah.
can't we show empowered women? So we need to change the mindset. We have to use media, you know, electronic or print, all sorts of media, education system. So through that, I think the whole society, as it is, there's a big change. You see females in all walks of life. 20 years back, you wouldn't see so many females. Now, this has resulted in a lot of, you know, like guys finding, life partners for themselves, because females are much more educated than the males. So again, there's you know, if too much. So we have to look at all these problems which are arising from this and take males in confidence as well, because it's not that, you know, they might get into inferiority complex that, oh my God, you know, when you don't know that.
Did you find there's a lot of confusion now because of the role reversal? And
Yes, because, you know, like what was a male's role was painted and imparted to the male, that from a childhood, if you see that, you know, a son would get all the priority, all the VIP treatment.
Yeah.
So that was, you know, connected with religion. That was, I think,
and yet it's
misinterpretation.
totally contrary
Islam
to
is
the example of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yes,
And his
so
wife,
that
who
is
was
totally.
a
So we
financially
need to
independent woman.
do ijtihad, okay, and educate the masses and apply it in our teachings. You know, the teachings of Quran and Sunnah, and look at the life of our holy Prophet, how he treated his wives, his children, everybody. You know, he believed in justice and equality. So that is what is needed in our society, which is missing, and which is the root cause of all the problems which are there.
So it's again going back to the mindset, of
Yes,
course. That is
yes.
the most important thing.
Yes.
So Binish, what have you found, because you actually work with people in the legal capacity, what have you found? Is there a lot of confusion because of the role reversal? Is there any positive impact that you see coming from all these?
But how do you say it's a role reversal? It's not. It's just women doing whatever they were doing, but they're being able to, I mean, I don't call it a role reversal. I think it is giving women their rightful place. And
if a woman is financially independent, and let's say she even becomes the breadwinner for the family, wouldn't you say it's a role reversal, because now the man
but
is...
this is an arrangement, and a man may feel more comfortable doing a lot of the other things that perhaps a woman did. By stereotyping those roles.
Correct, absolutely.
We make it very difficult
That's
for people to cross over.
Not to stereotype, there won't be any reversal.
See, the point is that cross, that makes it so hard and fast, and you know, it reflects badly if a man looks after a baby or stays at home or drives the wife to her work. The point is that work is work, and we should respect the work and whoever does it. And in a household where there are responsibilities, that is the responsibility of the people in the household, how they arrange them.
Yes.
And they should not be bound by some sort of notional
So
stereotype.
important. You know, this is so important because I agree with you 100% that when we stereotype the roles, that's when these types of things take place.
problems
A
start
truly
beginning.
secure man, a truly secure man should not have a problem if he's taking care of the children
And that's an
or
internal
being nice to
domestic
his wife.
arrangement.
Yeah.
Yet what happens is when a man is doing something like that, we, you know, the
Yeah.
society would
Societal
discourage
pressure,
him by
yeah.
saying bivi ka gulam or something like that.
bilkul.
And that is
We
where
need a
the
change of
problems are.
mindset, Iram. That is what I believe. That you know, these
to
same
break some of
Pakistani
these
men, when
We
they
do,
go
we
abroad, they are doing everything.
They are,
You know, they're
yes.
helping their wives and changing their kids' nappies and all that. But when they do the same in Pakistan, they are labeled as Zan Murid or things like that. You see, so we need to, you know, we need a change of mindset. You know, That
And
is
this
what
also, society has to be a little bit more open-minded.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, society has become so tight, it has created these fences around itself, individuals have.
Yeah.
And we need to come out of it. And I think
There is
and,
no choice because it's changing already. The
and,
change
and,
is here.
and the world is changing.
Yes, and
the
resisting the
demands of
change
the
is
world
futile.
are
Yes,
also changing.
absolutely.
And I think a lot depends on how you bring up your sons.
Yes,
So
yes,
very
you
right.
see,
important. And
that
that
is where we
sits
come in. That
squarely
is
on the
our
shoulders of
responsibility
women,
as mothers,
Yes.
as sisters, of course.
Raise strong
how we
sons.
raise our sons, and that is what I do with my son. I've got one son, mashallah, and from day one I've told him there's equality. You know, I mean, he doesn't get any VIP treatment or anything like that. So he knows that he has to, foot the bill and
Does he
work
help
hard
out in
to
the kitchen sometimes?
Yes, of course,
Good,
from day
good,
one.
good.
If you're feeling hungry, please come down,
Yes.
help yourself. So there's no VIP treatment,
Yes.
That's
which
right.
is not very common in Pakistani household, So that is what is needed, the upbringing of our males in our society, how we bring them up and make them aware of their sisters' rights.
I
You
agree,
see, their
I
wives'
agree.
rights. And of course, when we get a son married, we have different expectations for our bahu, but we have different expectations for our daughter when she gets married.
Yes.
So basically, we women have to change our, way of bringing up our
Yes.
sons too. That will really make a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I was in a meeting not too long ago, and I was talking about my passion for women's rights, and I want to do this, and I was talking about my experience as an entrepreneur, and it was maybe 10 minutes of talk, and there was a very senior journalist sitting there, and very educated. And after all of that, the one comment he had to make was, he said, yeah, all of that is well and good. Tell us what kind of dal chawal you can make. And it was, my mouth really just fell open because I couldn't expect that. And everybody else laughed. And of course, me being new to Pakistan, I was just shocked at that time, like, wow, I can't believe that you could even say something like that. Goes back to that mindset.
Yeah.
It's acceptable to make a joke about a woman like, hey,
And that's
you
one
are
of the very
zero,
important-
everything else is zero unless you're good in the kitchen. And
Yeah.
it's just like, and I told him, I said, well, I actually need GPS to go to my kitchen.
Yeah.
And I don't think he liked me after that, but that's okay.
So you see, coming back to your point, yeah, I strongly agree with you because that is a typical mindset. I tell everybody because I don't like cooking at all. So I jokingly I shared it with my friend that I wasn't made for cooking. So I tell
That's
my son,
perfectly all
yeah, I
right.
tell my son, okay, you better learn cooking. So if tomorrow, if your wife doesn't know cooking, at least you can, you won't, be left hungry. So it's better you learn cooking. So why can't we train our sons to, do cooking when these same boys go abroad?
Yes.
They are cooking and they are cleaning and washing their clothes and all that. They're perfectly fine doing all that, in foreign countries, but not here in Pakistan.
Yes.
You see, because we mothers, we sisters, we spoil them rotten.
And I feel that what we were talking about earlier, that the change is here. Resistance is only going to create more chaos. It is going to create more misery because women are now, young girls are going to ask for the kind of rights that they see around them.
Yes.
And if you have not raised a son that is able to accept that and is not secure within himself, guess what? He's not going to be able to stay happy in a marriage, nor is he
Right.
going to be able to keep his wife happy. So this is something that is upon us. And like Smart Nations, we need to really start adjusting and making changes. So what are some of the goals that you would like to talk about for this year, especially from the rest of us, ma'am? How can we women help you in achieving those goals?
See, I think when women go out toward, our biggest sort of goal is to get women to be accepted as equal citizens, given due respect, given opportunities which are equal to others, and respected for their wanting to have shape their lives. I think that's what we want ideally.
Absolutely.
Now, but immediately we have to look at what are the barriers to all that, and then be able to address those barriers. The barrier may be in the form of lack of resources. Barrier can be in the form of violence. And I think one of the biggest, strongest barriers for women's full participation in anything is violence and the fear of violence. The fact that, one of our recent surveys in 2012-13 found that ever married women, almost 37% have experienced spousal violence. And violence only is not physical violence, it's mental violence, it's emotional violence.
Yes.
So all that,
They don't leave marks, but they can be deeper.
they scar you.
They scar
And
you.
they create, a more withdrawal from things. So I think those are the things that we need to address really well. And that's one of my thematic areas for the Commission, is that to try and eliminate violence or cut it down by supporting, making sure that laws are implemented, by supporting institutions that can provide succor to women who are in problems, not only for violence problem, but also in terms of placement of jobs, opportunities of education,
Yes.
and a safe environment. So those are the things that we really need to go, but at the same time we want women who can voice these concerns in decision making. So we want able women in our local government, we want able women in our assemblies, and we want leaders, women leaders at all levels. And I think you are a leader, I'm sure, Iram.
All of us
Absolutely.
are. I think all of us are.
And finally, we want opportunities for women to be able to earn, be independent, and not feel constantly dependent, and therefore, not equal.
Yes.
So those are the things that we, as the Commission, wants, and I think there is a lot of concurrence that these are the objectives that we need to really go towards, and these are the challenges that we should meet. And an important challenge is really the ability for women to say what they need and want and raise a voice, for the legislators and government to implement what they promise, and for opportunities for women.
Wonderful. I want to thank all of you for being here today with us. It has been wonderful sharing this opportunity. I am deeply honored to have had the space shared with you, esteemed guests, and thank you so much for all the service that you are doing right now.
We're
in
just
helping
trying
women.
the challenge is very high, but I think if we all put our
And it's so
shoulders
worth it.
to it, we are going.
It's so worth it as well. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today in celebrating this National Day for Women Empowerment in Pakistan. But remember, this is not just about celebrating a day. It's also not just about implementing laws. It's about a change of mindset that we are all responsible for at an individual level. Because remember, if we want to see a strong Pakistan, we must empower the women. Suppressed, beaten, or weak women do not raise strong nations. Only strong women raise strong nations. If you want to see Pakistan strive and thrive, then we must strengthen our women. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Those people, when they set their minds and set their target on someone, they have to, they're not used to hearing no.
Yeah.
So it's a very fun take on the traditional trope of what a vamp is, because what we used to be calling her on set, we used to be calling her a jhalli vamp, because she is, usually you see vamps as always the other woman, the woman who's a seductress, the woman who's conniving, yeah. So there's always a kind of a negative connotation associated to that kind of a character. Whereas interestingly enough, whenever you show a man as a philanderer, or you know, somebody with a roving eye, or somebody who's kind of
Thank you for putting it this way, though.
so you know, I mean, when the gender is reversed, it's always like, yeah, cheetah.
Casanova. Doing right now.
We're
in
just
helping
trying
women.
the challenge is very high, but I think if we all put our
And it's so
shoulders
worth it.
to
Drop
it, we
in
are
the
going
It's
to
so worth it as well. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today in